Hi, my name's Thalassa. While I was overseas, working, building a life, I got an email saying I no longer had access to our family's bank account. That same night, my sister sent me a message. You're nothing without me. But it didn't stop there. She sold our mother's house, rewrote the will, and made sure my name was erased from every family event, including Mom's memorial. What do you do when the people who raised you decide you no longer count? And worse, what if they planned it that way all along? It was raining again. Paris never apologized for its grayness. After another long day juggling thesis drafts and broken printers, I walked the familiar 4 blocks from campus to my small apartment, stopping only to grab a stale croissant from the corner bakery that always closed too early. I kicked off my shoes and dropped my bag by the door. I didn't turn on the lights. The city's glow through the thin curtains was enough. My laptop sat where I left it, half open, waiting. I just wanted to clear a few emails, maybe distract myself from the silence that had settled in since Mom passed. But there it was, subject line in bold at the top of my inbox. Your access has been terminated. I thought it was spam at first. I blinked, reread it, clicked it open. It wasn't spam. Dear Miss Quinn, this message confirms your removal as a listed party on account hash, as authorized by Miss Vera Gennaro. For further inquiries, please contact your local branch. I read it again, and again. I wasn't just locked out. I was erased. My name, my rights, my contributions, all wiped out with a line of authorization. No heads up, no explanation, just an email. I called the bank immediately, the French hold music looping like it was mocking me. Eventually, someone in English told me flatly, "Yes, ma'am. The change was requested 2 weeks ago. Your sister, Miss Gennaro, is now the sole account holder. We no longer show you as an authorized participant." My voice was calm. Too calm. I set that account up with my mother. Half the funds are mine. I'm sorry, the clerk replied. You'd need to pursue this through legal channels. Click. I stared at the wall. My ears were ringing, but there was no sound. My fingers were trembling, not from fear, but from something older, deeper, something like disbelief with a spine. Then my phone buzzed. A voice message from Vera. I played it without thinking. You're nothing without me. Always were. 9 words, flat tone, no context, no preamble, just a direct punch to the part of me that still hoped we could be sisters. I didn't reply. I didn't cry either. I just sat there, in my too small Paris apartment, letting the words sink like stones into water. That voice, hers, used to tell me stories when I couldn't sleep. Used to braid my hair before school. Used to whisper, "We're all we've got." But now, it sounded colder than the November rain. Mom used to say, Vera lashes out when she feels cornered. Don't take it to heart. But what if this wasn't lashing out? What if this was who Vera had been becoming all along? A few hours passed. I couldn't tell how many. Time folded into itself. My laptop went to sleep. The rain never stopped. Then, as if the world wanted to mock me one more time, the Wi-Fi blinked out. Just like that. Black screen. I stared at it. Felt it. That's what it felt like now. Everything turned off, shut out, dimmed down. I was still here, but I didn't seem to matter. Eventually, when the connection returned, I reopened an old spreadsheet. A personal file where I used to track every dollar I'd transferred into the family account over the years. Tuition I helped pay, repairs on the old house, Mom's medical bills when insurance got weird. Line after line, my name, my money, my care. Now my name was gone from the account. And Vera's was everywhere. But something in her tone told me this wasn't the first time Vera had erased someone. I didn't sleep. I watched the ceiling fade from black to gray, tracing cracks in the plaster that I'd never noticed before. The rain outside hadn't let up. It tapped the window like it was trying to remind me of something I'd forgotten on purpose. Around 6, I made tea I didn't drink and sat at the small table by the window. I wasn't expecting anything. I just needed to feel like I was doing something normal. So I opened Facebook. The video autoplayed without sound at first. My cousin's name in the corner, caption, "A beautiful memorial for a beautiful soul. Thank you, Vera, for organizing everything." I turned up the volume slowly, like peeling back a bandage. There she was, my sister, standing at a podium draped in white lilies and fabric that looked too expensive for something so hollow. She was wearing navy. Our mother hated navy. And as Mom always said, family is what shows up when life gets hard. Vera's voice cracked on cue, a few murmurs of agreement from the audience. But that wasn't what Mom used to say. What she really said, often after a long shift at the clinic and one of our fights, was, "People will lie, baby, but watch who shows up when there's no spotlight." They didn't show me in the slideshow. Not once. There was a blurry childhood photo, me in the background holding a popsicle, barely visible behind Vera's 8th birthday cake. But that was it. 10 full minutes of memories, and I wasn't in any of them. 2 weeks ago. That's when it happened. 2 weeks, and no one thought to call, text, tag, email, nothing. And they knew where I was. They always knew. Silas sat in the front row. Our father, looking solemn, nodding along with Vera's every word like a man who had long since made his choice. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence was its own speech. I closed the video. I didn't cry. I felt still, like the part of me that should have reacted had burned out already. I searched for the event page. It took less than a minute to find. A memorial for Maria Quinn, hosted by Vera Gennaro. Guest list, over 100 names. Mine wasn't one of them. There were comments, dozens of them. What a touching ceremony. Vera, you were so strong. Your mother would be proud of you. Not us. Not even her daughters. Just her. I scrolled until I couldn't anymore, then shut the laptop. This wasn't about money. It never was. It was about rewriting the story. There was a moment, years ago, when Mom and I had been sitting on the back porch, drinking iced tea in the dead heat of August. Vera had just stormed off after losing some argument about the will. I remember Mom sighing and saying, "Just because she's loud doesn't mean she's right." At the time, I laughed. It felt like a harmless observation. Now, it felt like a warning I hadn't heard loud enough. I opened the shared drive we used for family documents, the one we started after Mom's first surgery. Empty. Everything had been deleted. Tax papers, property scans, even the notes from Mom's hospice plan. All gone. Even the folder labeled Estate 2021 Drafts. I stared at the blinking folder for a long time. Then I remembered something. 3 years ago, before her condition worsened, Mom handed me a USB drive during a visit. "Just in case your sister gets ahead of herself," she said with that dry half-smile. "You're better with computers." I hadn't thought about it since, but I knew exactly where it was, tucked into the back pocket of an old passport holder in the closet. I didn't move to get it yet. I just sat with the memory of her voice, how she'd never once doubted I'd understand what to do, when to act. They erased me from a tribute meant for her. What else had they rewritten? That night, I started listing everything that used to belong to both of us. The rain had finally let up, leaving behind a sky smeared in pale gray and a city that looked like it hadn't slept either. I hadn't left the apartment since the video. The tea on my desk had long since gone cold. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't tired. I wasn't anything, really. I opened the spreadsheet again, my old ledger with Mom. It was something we kept between us, almost like a secret journal of our sacrifices. Every tuition payment, every roof repair, every medical bill, each one annotated, cross-checked, and double-checked. She was always meticulous about it. It was how she stayed sane while managing so much on her own. I scrolled through the tabs slowly, and something odd caught my eye. There was no record of the house on Harper Street, Mom's childhood home, the one she insisted we never sell. It was supposed to stay in the family, a living anchor, she'd called it once. The last entry was months old, and my name had been removed from every mention of ownership. I searched again. Still gone. At first I thought I made a mistake, so I called the Franklin County Recorder's Office. "Hi, I'm trying to confirm ownership records on 213 Harper Street. I was one of the co-title holders. I just need to—" "Sure, let me pull that up," the woman on the line said. A few clicks, a pause. "Okay, looks like that property is listed solely under a Vera Gennaro. Title was transferred about 8 weeks ago." My fingers clenched around the edge of the desk. There must be a mistake. I never signed anything. I was a joint owner with my mother. The woman cleared her throat. The transaction file lists a notarized document and a signature from you, witnessed by a Dorian Maddox. Do you recognize that name? I felt a flush rise to my face. I hadn't said his name aloud in years, but I knew who he was. Vera's boyfriend. Charming, always slightly overdressed. The kind of man who knew how to work a room and make you feel like you didn't belong in it. Yeah, I recognize him. Well, if you're contesting this, you'll need to file a claim of fraud. Do you want me to email the documents? Yes, I said flatly. I hung up and stared at the wall for a while. Vera hadn't just stolen money. She'd stolen brick and mortar. She'd taken the walls that held our mother's first memories. The floorboards our grandfather laid himself. The backyard where I learned to ride a bike with Vera pushing from behind. And she did it with a forged version of my name. I grabbed my phone and hit Silas's number. Maybe, just maybe, he'd say something. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe he'd be on my side. He answered on the second ring. Dad, it's me. Silence. Did you know about the house? Did Vera tell you she was... Click. The call ended. That single sound echoed louder than anything else that day. So this was the family now. One who nods along. One who clicks off. One who pretends to forget your name unless it benefits them to remember. I stood up and opened my closet. In the back corner was a small zippered case I hadn't touched since Mom passed. Inside, tucked between an old passport and a handful of foreign coins, was a portable hard drive. She had handed it to me during one of her lucid days, months before she passed. Keep this safe, she said, just in case your sister ever forgets how families are supposed to work. I hadn't asked questions then. I figured it was tax stuff or more of her over-preparation. But today I understood. I plugged it into my laptop. The screen lit up. A single folder blinked at me, waiting. The folder was named If Anything Happens. I didn't expect to see her name on my screen again. Agnes Kellerman, the neighbor who lived across from us when I was a kid. Her voice had always carried through our open windows on summer evenings, thick with cigarette smoke and unsolicited wisdom. I hadn't heard from her in years, but there it was. A voicemail at 2:12 a.m., time-stamped like a soft knock from the past. Thalassa, she began, her voice cracked and steady all at once. I saw something online. That video of Vera's speech. I've seen this before, dear. Your mom? She fought Vera once too, quietly. You were probably too young to remember, but I thought you ought to know. She paused before adding, Your mother came over one night sobbing. Vera had changed the locks on the little rental your mom co-owned with her cousin. She didn't tell you, did she? She said she didn't want you to hate your sister. The message ended with a long breath, as if she was holding something back, maybe regret, maybe more truth. I listened to it twice, then again. Each time it scraped something raw in me. My mom had been through this, and she'd chosen to protect me from it. Or maybe she'd assumed I wouldn't believe it. Either way, she'd swallowed the betrayal so I wouldn't taste it. Why didn't I see it coming? I opened the email from my cousin Lainey next. The subject line, Thought this might bother you. Sorry in advance. Attached was a photo of the memorial invitation I never got. It read, In loving memory of Maria Quinn, hosted by Vera Gennaro. With special support from Thalia Quinn, event volunteer. It wasn't even a typo. It was deliberate. A correction of identity. A demotion. As if I'd shown up in a vest to pass out bottled water. I hadn't even known the thing was happening. And yet somehow I was slotted in like a prop in someone else's version of our family. I stared at my name, wrong name really, and felt something shift. This wasn't a simple erasure anymore. It was a rewrite, and it had Vera's fingerprints all over it. This wasn't an oversight. It was a message, I muttered to myself, heart pounding in a way that no longer felt like grief. It felt like humiliation weaponized. I closed the email, then stood up to stretch. My shoulders ached from hunching over the screen for too long. I walked across the apartment and opened the box marked Mom that had been sitting untouched under my desk since I returned to Paris. Inside were photos, her old checkbook, a few dried-out pens, and a plastic sleeve labeled in her handwriting, Final Will Drafts, 2019. They weren't signed, they weren't notarized, but they were there, in her handwriting, with dates and annotations and little notes like, double-check this with Thalassa, or ask Silas if he agrees on this split. split, not give it all to Vera, not let one daughter pretend she carried the world alone. There on page 3 were my initials, TQ, written beside a bullet point that listed both our names next to the Harper Street house. To remain jointly held until sold or passed down. It wasn't legally binding, not yet, but it was proof of intent, of her voice, recorded on paper, not twisted in Vera's mouth. I sat back down and opened a new browser window. I searched for probate attorneys in New York, not because I thought someone would rescue me, but because I knew now I couldn't stay in this passive space, watching the lies harden like cement. I booked a virtual consultation for Friday morning. The firm specialized in contested estates and had a reputation for discretion. That was all I needed. Not fireworks, just facts. I whispered aloud to the silence as if Mom could hear me through the ether. I let it slide when she yelled, when she lied, but now she's editing the truth. I didn't know what the outcome would be, but for the first time in weeks, I felt something that resembled direction. If Vera wanted war, she just got her declaration. The rain hadn't left Paris yet, and neither had I. It misted the cafe window like someone had breathed too hard on the glass and walked away. I sat by myself in the back corner, sipping lukewarm coffee, my laptop open to the video call screen. The attorney's face appeared, clean-cut, mid-40s, firm but not unfriendly. His name was Andrew Locke, a recommendation from a classmate who dealt with an ugly trust dispute last year. She said he didn't flinch when things got messy. "I've reviewed your preliminary documents," he said, tapping something off-screen. "Let's go over what you have." I kept it simple. No stories about Vera's bitterness, no mention of manipulation or the voicemail I still hadn't deleted. Just facts, numbers, names. I forwarded him a PDF with scans of the unsigned 2019 will drafts, screenshots of bank transfers, the spreadsheet I'd built with my mother back when we thought order would protect us from betrayal. "The documents are incomplete," he said after a beat, "but detailed. It's clear your mother intended for shared ownership, even if she didn't formalize it." I nodded, jotting down notes even though I didn't need to. It gave my hands something to do. Then I opened the email from Marcella, the one with the photo she'd taken before Vera ever touched Mom's desk drawers. It was just a slip of paper in Mom's handwriting. Notarized? No, but dated, labeled, divided evenly, in her usual looping cursive. Andrew leaned closer to the camera as he read. "This won't stand as a will, but it helps tell a story. Courts respond to intention when documentation is thin." It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it wasn't a no. It was a door half cracked, and that was enough. I leaned back and took a breath. "Can we file something preliminary to freeze whatever she's trying to move?" "We can request a temporary injunction and begin a probate challenge," he said. "If there's a pending transaction, this could buy us time. But it has to be quiet. If your sister catches wind and moves faster, we'll lose leverage." I nodded again. "Do it." He didn't ask if I was sure. By that afternoon, the paperwork had been sent. A formal probate dispute was logged. The injunction request was marked urgent. Vera wouldn't get an alert, not yet. But the gears had shifted. She wouldn't see it coming. And that's exactly how I wanted it. I didn't call her, didn't send a passive-aggressive text. I didn't give her the satisfaction of knowing I'd taken the bait. Let her feel what it's like when power changes hands behind closed doors. Later that night, I stood at my kitchen counter eating a piece of dry toast. I hadn't realized I skipped lunch. There was an emptiness in my stomach that had nothing to do with hunger. I remembered something my mother once said after she'd mediated a brutal argument between two of her sisters. "Strength isn't who yells the loudest," she told me, cutting apples for a pie. "It's who prepares the best." Back then, I thought she meant grocery lists or holiday planning. I understand now she meant this. Vera got signatures, I got records. A ping broke the silence, an email confirmation. The injunction paperwork had been delivered to the county registrar. The freeze was in motion. She didn't know yet, but soon she would. I clicked the screen off and let the dark take the apartment. I didn't need music or distraction or even a victory lap. Just quiet. And that's when she tried to sell the house. 2 weeks passed in a haze of case updates, document scans, and low-lit nights with too much coffee. I was beginning to adjust to the rhythm of legal silence, measured, deliberate, weaponized. That morning, a notification blinked across my inbox. A secure message from the Franklin County Clerk's office. I clicked it, heart steady, but curious. This is to confirm that the requested property transaction freeze has been successfully applied. No further actions on parcel ID 014019*** will be processed until the matter is reviewed by probate. I scrolled to the attached PDF, scanning until one date stopped me cold. March 12th, Mom's birthday. Vera had tried to sell the Harper Street house the day after we should have been lighting a candle for the woman who held us together, longer than she ever got credit for. Not even a year had passed. She didn't wait. And the only reason the deal didn't go through was me. I closed the file and leaned back, letting that small, sharp truth settle in. Not satisfaction. Something colder. She was never mourning. She was marketing. 3 hours later, the next email came, this one from the buyer's agent. Per your injunction notice, our client is withdrawing from the agreement due to active legal complications. A single line at the bottom read, "Deposit to be refunded in full. Trust in process compromised." I imagined Dorian reading it, probably pacing, probably shouting, probably blaming some intern or underwriter or Vera herself. He'd always carried himself like a man who could out-negotiate gravity. But you can't argue with a freeze order. And Vera? I didn't need to hear her voice to know how she'd react. She'd rage privately, then spin publicly. Probably post something vague and polished, navigating some unexpected transitions, and hope nobody asked too many questions. But Columbus wasn't a big city. People talk, and she had tried to sell the family home, the one our mother told neighbors she'd never part with. The story would spread, slow and certain, like a crack down old glass. I said nothing. The next morning, I sat on my bedroom floor, sorting through more of Mom's files. A yellowed envelope caught my eye, addressed to me in her handwriting, but never sent. Inside was a copy of a bank transfer receipt. $7,500 moved into a savings account labeled Thalassa Final Year. The date was from my last semester of grad school. I remembered how I scraped together rent that spring, juggling tutoring gigs and substitute lectures. Vera told me the funds we'd set aside had to go toward urgent roof repairs. "It's leaking bad," she'd said. "Mom's too proud to tell you." Turns out, there was no leak. The invoice for repairs was never filed. The savings had vanished. Into what? Vera's business account? Dorian's brokerage fee? That wasn't help. That was theft dressed up in duty. I sat there for a while, holding the receipt like it could answer something. It didn't. Later that day, I called Andrew. "She's moving fast," I told him. "She'll try something else." "Then we need to move faster," he said. "We need to go public. Quiet doesn't work when the other side is shameless." "I'm not looking for a spotlight." "Then aim for evidence, something irrefutable." I nodded even though he couldn't see me. This wasn't about paper anymore. It was about stories, about which version of our mother the world would remember, and who got to speak on her behalf. Vera had rewritten too much already. It was time someone read the fine print aloud, and just when I thought she'd stop, she doubled down. Vera's counterattack didn't come in the form of a phone call. That would have taken nerve. Instead, it arrived through the subtle channels she preferred: community Facebook groups, comments slipped into neighborhood forums, shared screenshots of old emails stripped of context. Family should stay loyal, even when it's hard. Some people only show up when there's something to gain. I handled everything when no one else would. I didn't need to be tagged to know it was about me. My name wasn't always mentioned, but the picture was painted with enough strokes for people to fill in the gaps. A carefully curated narrative of a devoted daughter versus the absent academic, too busy studying abroad to care. She even posted a years-old email I'd sent during Mom's first hospital stay, one where I apologized for not making it home in time. That was the part she highlighted, not the paragraph where I arranged to cover expenses, not the 3 follow-ups where I checked on prescriptions and appointments, just the guilt. I scrolled in silence, reading the comments that followed, some defending her, others cautious. A few asked questions, quickly ignored. Then I got the bank alert, a $300 deposit. Memo. Hope this helps, little sister. I stared at it long enough for my screen to dim. The kind of gesture that would look generous to outsiders. A calculated insult to anyone who knew the backstory. It wasn't money. It was a leash, dressed like kindness. The next morning, I walked to the post office and withdrew the exact amount in cash. I placed it inside a plain white envelope, no return address. Just one yellow post-it stuck to the bills. Keep it. You'll need it more than I will. I mailed it to her office, not her house. I wanted her to feel it where she wore her authority. That afternoon, the wind shifted. I received a text from an unknown number. You need to see this. Attached was a video clip, short, grainy, clearly recorded from a distance. Vera's voice, unmistakable. Don't worry, I handled the little one. She's not coming back. Laughter followed. Dorian's voice, smug and familiar. The person who sent the message followed up. I used to work for him. She never paid my last invoice. Figured you'd want some truth for once. It didn't take long for the video to spread. Someone posted it anonymously to the same community board she'd been using to frame me. Within hours, her post was removed. Comments disabled. Silence took its place. Louder than applause. I didn't respond publicly. I didn't gloat. I just watched as her armor cracked piece by piece. Back in my apartment, I pulled up the court documents. I revised my affidavit, added attachments, lined up every receipt and record that showed my role, the parts she tried to erase. Then I wrote a statement, not for the internet, for the court, for the truth. She burned the last bridge herself, and now the smoke is everyone's to see. Later that night, I booked my flight. One way, no announcement. I didn't tell Marcella. I didn't even tell my attorney. Some things don't need to be declared. I was done waiting. It was time to walk through the front door myself. I arrived in Columbus without telling a soul. No welcome party, no family dinner, no Vera. The hotel was tucked off a back road, one of those business inns with no charm and no questions. I gave the clerk a different last name and paid in full for 2 nights. I didn't bring much, just a laptop, a folder of documents, and the pendant Mom gave me when I was 16. I hadn't worn it in years, but that morning I clasped it around my neck like armor. That evening, I took a rideshare to the Sheraton downtown where the Mid-State Women's Philanthropy Gala was being held. Vera was the keynote. Of course she was. They always chose someone polished, composed, charismatic. Someone who could smile while saying nothing. That was Vera's specialty. The ballroom buzzed with conversations dressed in chiffon and champagne. I moved silently, unnoticed, taking a seat at the back. My name wasn't on the list, but I wasn't here to eat. She walked on stage like she belonged there. Straight spine, perfect makeup, the same rehearsed humility I'd seen her use on hospital boards and family reunions. Family, she began, is not just who raises us. It's who holds us upright when we're tempted to fall. I closed my eyes. Mom never said that. Vera did, over and over, until people believed it was wisdom passed down instead of words crafted to sound deep and mean little. Midway through her speech, I stood. I didn't shout. I didn't storm the stage. I walked down the aisle slowly, calmly, holding only a slim folder and my silence. When I reached the steps, I paused. 3 minutes, I said, facing the event coordinator. That's all I'm asking. The woman hesitated, then looked at Vera. Vera's face twitched, just for a second. Then she nodded. I turned to the microphone. My voice didn't shake. My name is Thalassa Quinn. I wasn't on the program tonight, and many of you have never heard my name, though you've likely heard hers. I looked over the room, half curious, half confused. A few phones quietly began recording. I'm not here to embarrass anyone. I'm here to clarify a few things about the legacy of Maria Quinn, my mother. I pulled out the handwritten draft of the will, projected it on the screen behind me. Date, notes, Mom's signature, clear though informal, side by side with a notarized receipt showing my financial contributions. The spreadsheet of our joint expenses. Then finally, the audio. Vera's voice echoed through the speakers. Don't worry, I handled the little one. She's not coming back. A wave of breathlessness swept the room, the kind of silence that follows exposure. I turned back to the crowd. I came tonight not for revenge, but to restore what's been rewritten. I stepped away before anyone could speak, passing Vera without looking at her. Her expression was unreadable, her hands clenched at her sides. Outside, the air felt colder. Or maybe I was just warmer from within. Hours later, I sat across from Andrew Locke, my attorney, in a quiet booth at a diner near the courthouse. "You made a splash," he said, sipping bad coffee. "But you know that doesn't change the court. Public perception isn't legal precedent." "I know," I replied. "She's still in possession. The assets are still frozen, but that won't last forever. Then we file the full injunction. Tomorrow morning." I nodded. "Do it." Back at the hotel, I checked my messages. Just one voicemail, from Marcella. "You didn't have to go up there like that, but I'm glad you did. Your mom, she'd be proud, not because you fought, because of how you fought." The tears came quietly, which is how I preferred them. Not as a show, as release. For once I let them. But even victories have shadows, and hers was waiting in a shoebox. 2 weeks after I walked into that ballroom and let the truth stand on its own legs, I found myself back inside the courthouse. Not in front of a judge this time, but across a wooden table from Vera. 2 attorneys between us, a mediator beside them, and silence all around. She didn't look at me. She wore black again. Funeral chic, I called it in my head. Her posture was rigid, her jaw tight, like she was holding in everything she wanted to say. But there was nothing left for her to say that would matter. She agreed to mediation. It wasn't an admission of guilt. It wasn't even an apology. It was a calculation. Avoid escalation. Avoid court records. Avoid the final collapse of whatever public goodwill she thought she still had. The settlement terms were straightforward. Partial restitution, formal reinstatement of my name on family assets, full access restored to the accounts she had locked me out of. Her attorney handed me the documents with the professionalism of someone who knew this wasn't a win for their side. I didn't feel victorious, just released. I signed. She signed. The notary stamped. It was done. The next day, I went to Marcella's house to drop off some boxes of documents she'd asked for. Her garage was cluttered the way only retired nurses keep cluttered. Half medical, half family. "I think there's still something of your mom's here," she said, opening a storage bin. I found it behind the holiday decorations. Inside was a shoebox I hadn't seen since the funeral. My name was written in red ink across the top in Mom's handwriting. Block letters, bold but soft. There was a letter inside, sealed. I opened it in the car, alone. "If things ever get dark, remember, silence is not weakness. It's how we outlast storms. I know what your sister is capable of. I just hoped she'd choose differently. But your strength is quiet, steady. You don't need to shout to be heard. And if you ever forget that, read this again. Love always, Mom." The tears came before I finished the last line. Not the kind that sting, the kind that soften. Vera didn't face criminal charges. There was no scandal, no arrest, no dramatic fall. But she stepped down from 2 community boards. People stopped returning her calls. Her fundraiser invite list went from 200 to 12. Dorian disappeared quietly after that. Last I heard, he moved to Arizona. No one asked why. And me? I didn't hate her. That's the thing no one tells you about betrayal. You can move past it without dragging rage behind you. Some people don't deserve the rent your anger charges. I visited Mom's grave the morning before I flew back to Paris. The sun was barely up. Dew clung to the grass like it was afraid to fall. I laid down a bouquet of wildflowers. Daisies, goldenrod, a few soft pink snapdragons. Tied around the stems was a ribbon, the same one from the letterbox. I'd written 3 words on it. Shared. Always. I didn't say much, just stood there and let the quiet hold me. "I came back for justice," I whispered, "but I'm leaving with peace." The flight home was uneventful. I read a book, stared out the window, let myself rest. Back in Paris, I unpacked slowly, with care. The pendant went back into its velvet pouch, the folder into a locked drawer. And the letter? That stayed on my desk. Not as proof, as anchor, because not every scar heals clean, but some of them remind you just how strong you've become. Looking back, I didn't win because I shouted louder or had more money. I won because I stood still when everything tried to shake me loose. The truth has a quiet weight. It doesn't always make noise, but it doesn't go away either. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not let bitterness own you. Stand firm, be patient, document everything. And when the time comes, let your calm become your strength. Have you ever been written out of your own family's story? Have you ever had to fight just to be seen? If this story touched something in you, drop a 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't connect, I'd still love to know why and where you're tuning in. Your voice matters here, and if you want more true human stories like this one, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Let's keep sharing, learning, and growing together.